Barvo in Dallas, Texas. Hey, Barvo, it says that I am misinformed. You think I'm misinformed about peace-loving Muslims.
Yes, Tom, I do. First of all, I want to say I listen to you quite often. I'm probably poles apart from you. I'm not a Republican. I'm a conservative, would register as conservative if I could in Texas. But I have to tell you, Tom, I admire you. I think you're very intelligent. There would nothing please me more than to sit down with you over a couple of good bottles of wine and a nice dinner, because I do admire, as Theodore Roosevelt said, you're in the arena.
Well, thank you, Barvo.
Thank you.
So let me understand this right. Do you know any Muslims?
I have worked in the Middle East over a 20-year period. I not only know Muslims, I go to their mosque, I talk to their imams. I recently debated an imam in front of about 1,000 people, and in his office, when I went out to meet the imam, and I took a picture of it, there was a picture of our White House in his office, of our White House with an Arab flag on it. Now, I have read many Qurans. The Qurans that you buy in the United States, their words have been changed in many times from the Qurans you will buy in the Middle East. For instance, in their book, The Table, in Surah 532, if you buy a Quran in the Middle East, it will say, if you see a Christian or Jew, attack him, cut off his right foot and his left hand, and then crucify him. The Quran that's printed in this country simply says, God will punish you. He will crucify you or have their hands and their feet amputated alternately. I don't think the Muslims are in this country to integrate. I think they're here to dominate. They have done so in some 40 nations of the world. I do not.
How is that not true of Christians, Barvo?
How is that not true of what?
Of Christians. You've got Christian groups in this country that want government funding. They want all kinds of allowances. They want to be able to. I mean, they just successfully got the Supreme Court to say,
some of those things
they can lead public prayer.
Well, I don't find a problem with public prayer, and
in venues paid for by taxpayers.
Pardon?
In venues paid for by taxpayers. You don't mind if your tax dollars go to pay for a Muslim prayer.
I don't mind if the Muslims do it among themselves. That's their right to pray in this country, but it's not their right to change our country, to dominate our country. Ibrahim Hooper, who is head of the CAR, Council on American Islamic
I know him.
Relations.
He's been on the program a number of times.
Well, he's publicly stated that he would be lying if he didn't wish that this country was under Sharia law and the Constitution was dissolved. Now, could that man?
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I have it. I have it written. I have a large repertoire of what these people have said.
But Barvo, can we step back a little bit and look at a slightly larger picture here? You're familiar with how Saudi Arabia has been aggressively exporting Wahhabism for for longer than the United States has been a republic. And
of course I do.
And so then that in Saudi Arabia you can find, and not just in Saudi Arabia, they're exporting these all over the region. Comic books that talk about how Jews take the blood of Muslims to make matzahs, comic books for kids.
I have a couple of them.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. I don't disagree that the Salafist, Wahhabist form of Sunni Islam that is being promoted and exported by the Saudis and for centuries now, aggressively for the last 8 or 9 decades, is toxic. I do not disagree with that. And just like I don't disagree with the form of Christianity practiced by people like Eric Rudolph, which dictates that they should murder anybody involved with abortions, I consider that toxic too. And
I do too, Tom. I do. As I say, you and I agree on a lot of things. I do too.
So how do we? I just got. In fact, I just handed it off. I need to get it back. I just got an email from a correspondent of mine in Tunisia, who's a Muslim who's living in Tunisia, who makes the point that it really wasn't until President Ali in Tunisia basically bought the IMF line and the World Bank line that they had to do a Thatcherism, a Reaganomics in Tunisia, stop price supports for food, stop price supports for fuel, privatize government industries, cut taxes on rich people, raise taxes on working people. And when Ali did that in order to qualify Tunisia for World Bank loans and things, that's when everything went to hell. And the same thing happened in Egypt, and the same thing happened in Syria, and the same thing happened in Libya. And those are not problems of Islam. Those are economic problems driving people to desperation. And the thing that they grab hold of is Islam. And just like in the United States, you've got people who find themselves in a position of desperation, or at least perceive themselves to be in a position of desperation, and they grab hold of these most toxic forms of Christianity.
Well, see, you and I disagree there, because Islam itself is toxic. Muhammad was, in my opinion, was the first Islamic terrorist. In 627, when he and his son Ali beheaded between 600 and 800 Jews in Medina after the Battle of the Trench. And that's where this beheading comes from. Up until that time, he had his new followers praying towards Jerusalem. Then he told them no longer pray towards Jerusalem, pray towards Mecca. So I find that there's a thread of evil that runs through.
So how is that different, Barvo, from the book of Joshua, where God repeatedly instructs Joshua to go basically from tribe to tribe and slaughter them?
That's true, but we had something in the Christian faith that Islam has never had. In the 1500s, we had something called the Reformation, and that made a great deal of difference in our faith.
I think, are you familiar with Sufism?
Oh, yes, I'm not of Sufism. Yes.
Would you consider Sufism to be a toxic variation of?
No, I do not. They're the ones that do the whirling dervish.
Right.
I do.
They're the Sufi. They're the mystics of Islam. But they're largely Shia rather than Sunni. To the best of my knowledge, there's no mystical subset of Sunni Islam. Actually, I'm going to stop right here, because neither one of us are Muslim and neither one of us are experts on this stuff. Although you obviously have studied it much more than I have, but I'm not going to make any more assertions. The point that you're making, well, let me back up. The point that I'm making is that it's not just religion, that you have to put the religion in the context of the region. You've got a region that has been oppressed for centuries, that has been exploited for centuries, principally by us and European powers, that has been occupied for centuries, principally by us and European powers. And people turn to whatever they can turn to. And if the common denominator that they have is their religion, they're going to turn to that. Doesn't it make more sense for us as a foreign policy to be saying to people in the region, let us help build schools for girls. Let us help modernize your society. Let's bring it, to reduce the toxic levels of extremism within their religion. Doesn't that make sense, Barvo?
I cannot argue with that, Tom, but I'm concerned about what's happening in this country. Now, while we're talking, there's a book I would recommend you read. It's called The Arab Lobby, and it talks about the very thing that you mentioned earlier about the Wahhabism, how much money they have in the past.
Oh, it's huge. Barvo, we're out of time. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the thoughtful